to Horror Hour.
We all go a little mad sometimes. Get you. Here's Johnny.
Well, hello and welcome to the Horror Hour. It's a place we discuss, we debate, we disagree on all things horror. But today, I'm one of the co-hosts here, Yutaka, and I've got a special guest to talk about his recent short, Swept Under, Ethan Soo. How are you today, man?
I'm good, Yutaka. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to chat about this.
Yeah, no, your project. So, well, it kind of hit me in the heart. And also I had to do some history on this because reading the press release, and it's true, I don't remember learning about this growing up in school. So tell me a little bit more about this project and why you wanted to tell this story.
Yeah. So I mean, this project was kind of created in the spur of a couple moments. I feel like it's always been, at least the Cambodian American story has always kind of been bubbling inside of me because, you know, when I was younger, my mom is from Cambodia and she came here in as a refugee in like the 80s. But when I was younger, you know, her kind of childhood was never like accessible for me just because it was such a traumatic experience for her and her family. And I guess that was something that I'd always kind of stayed in the back of my head, and I would always wonder what happened exactly because, you know, in high school we got like a little brief rundown of what happened historically, which for people who don't know, the Cambodian genocide was something that kind of occurred between 1975 and 1979, and it was kind of perpetrated by the Khmer Rouge, and I think it's at least within the top like 10 worst genocides in the history of the world. So
Yeah,
definitely not a light subject. But I always knew that was something that affected her family. And so kind of, you know, I'd say like about a year and a half ago was something that I wanted to re-explore with a new kind of perspective in the horror lens. And so that's kind of how that process started. And then it was also created, and I started to write it during like a you know, one of many waves of Asian hate crimes. And so I knew I wanted to address that subject, but from a different angle, and kind of highlight something that some type of Asian hate that is maybe a little harder to place, which in this case would be like US imperialism and colonialism.
Yeah, no, yes. It was interesting that you filmed this during the pandemic and during what I would also say is when we started to see, at least as of late, just a string of Asian hate crimes. And so it just, for me watching this, I was just thinking, you know, as an Asian American and just because of our culture, you know, both sides, I was just, it was always very hard to watch films like this, even though I appreciate it. And I thought you handled it, well, delicately. So I really liked that. And I hope people do get the message because there were several microaggressions in here that I was like, ooh, okay, that feels familiar a little bit. That was interesting.
Yeah. And like, I think the whole thing with like the portrayal of violence in movies, and in this movie I wanted to kind of, you know, it's a horror movie, so someone has to die or get hurt.
Sure.
I think that kind of goes along with the genre, but like how one does it, I think can kind of, you know, change the message of the film or kind of push it in one way or another. And so like for this I was very like intentional, hopefully, with how we depicted the violence, and we kind of like definitely wanted to lean more into the off-screen violence like Psycho or something like that, just because like, at least, you know, in my social media feeds or on the news or whatever, I'm just inundated with all of these like really horrific images, and that's something that I didn't want to put on the big screen and out into the world. And well, I mean, I hope that
I appreciate that, honestly. I felt it had more emotional impact because I don't need to see that to get the message. And so the fact that you did that is actually, it was a nice touch. And even still, the shot after that's what like hit me hard. I was like, ooh, that was good. But no. I appreciate that though. I also I would like to know then too what it was like. Is this I should have looked, is this your first short or that was in festivals or?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of simplify it, I mean, I guess it's my first short that has played at that will be playing at like a lot of major festivals. I just graduated from college. I went to USC and through their film program, so I made a bunch of student shorts that I was ultimately happy with, but I think just kind of the constraints of school, and then I finished school kind of in the midst of COVID, so kind of all those constraints I think definitely helped me navigate a different kind of film production side of the industry, but definitely I would say that this is I think one of the first shorts that I'm that is out there.
So and I know you were filming during COVID, but did it ever change the creative process, how you were going to approach this, or maybe even change story elements?
100%. I think going through COVID school and having to do a whole year online is definitely like it definitely played a part, whether we liked it or not, in terms of just the scale of the story. And I think when people watch it, it's a very contained story between a couple characters in one location. And I think that was something that definitely came out of COVID, but I think definitely worked for our benefit. And I think leaning into those restrictions and those constraints that were, that I placed on myself, definitely, it was a choice because of safety and concerns, but it was also, I think, worked well with the narrative and kind of, throughout the story, kind of expanding it into a larger story and kind of drawing those connections historically into a much smaller level in this one house with these characters. And I think ultimately, I think it worked out pretty well.
I would agree. I'd like to also talk about another reason why I was really drawn to this also was reading about your star, Alvin, and just the fact when he had stated, as a Cambodian American, that you were specifically searching for that, or that was the story. And so to be able to represent that, myself growing up here in the Midwest, I can tell you just in movies in general, growing up in the 80s, I can't say there were many big Asian names, or even aside, the only one I could truly think of that was Japanese American, but even Asian in general was really, Pat Morita, because he just had that fame. But still, I never saw myself in film. And so what was that experience like working with him? Because he seems very grateful, and I'm very grateful that you did that, because I appreciate being able to see, myself, or I think a lot of people appreciate that. But
yeah, no, and Alvin is such a saint. I think he had a lot of weight on this movie in terms of like what we were discussing and what he had to, and what his character served in terms of a larger like role of the story. And he was wonderful. I loved working with him. He was always, to backtrack a little bit, like finding a Cambodian actor in LA, definitely easier than other places because there's such a large Cambodian population, especially in like Long Beach, which is where like Cambodia town is. I think it is the largest population of Cambodians outside of the country.
Oh wow.
So like, yeah. But in the scope of LA, it's not like we're not dominating the area,
Yeah.
But despite all of the Cambodians here, there weren't a lot of people in the acting, or like in the entertainment side of the industry. So we actually I scoured the internet for Cambodian American talent.
Oh wow.
And we just cold reached out to a bunch of people, and a bunch of the other actors who had read for Cameron's role, actually ended up playing extras in the final scene, which I don't know if we should spoil or not.
We'll hold on, because that scene is, I want people to see this, and I don't want to spoil that. That was
okay. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so we found Alvin through, he had done a couple short films before, and they were mostly in the comedy space, but I think that was so interesting and so like,
wow.
I guess really attractive for me, because I wanted, Cameron to be likable, especially because I think we just needed characters to latch on to and in the scope of this larger story. And so something about his energy and his just like friendliness on camera really shone through. And I think that's why he made such a perfect Cameron. In terms of like working with him on set and rehearsals and stuff, he was always down for everything. Like we were rehearsing in my apartment and kind of at the location, and despite not having a huge like budget for this movie, he was always really down for the minor stunts that we had to do, any ideas that we kind of just generated on the spot. And I think that really comes through in the movie, because he's just such a great performer, and I just can't get enough of him in this movie. So that was work. Yeah. So that was life working with Alvin. Amazing guy.
Because this is I'm just curious, this is, a tough topic. How did you all decompress though, after either filming or just, during the filming, I guess, process?
We had a lot of conversations in rehearsals with Alvin and Lisa, who plays the sister, Beth, and Brandon, who plays the neighbor character. We had a lot of conversations over Zoom just about, despite telling such a, morbid story and subject matter, like finding ways to approach it from a very humanistic perspective. And so like, I think that definitely primed us and put us in a good spot for when we were shooting and on set. I think despite like it being a very horror movie, like I think we had a lot of fun on set.
Well, that's good.
I think that was really key to, helping us push our energy to get to the more intense scenes. I remember, and when it did get intense, it got pretty intense. I remember that when we were filming one of Alvin's key scenes with the bat, and kind of to avoid spoilers, that's what I'll just leave it at.
Yeah.
And despite part of Alvin being obscured, his like vocal performance and his like physical performance really got under my skin, and so I actually had to step away from the set and hang out in the bathroom for a second, just because I was so emotionally affected by what he was able to do with so little. And so that was like maybe like that was like how I had to decompress a couple of times, but yeah. And then also like during like the editing process, it was also really intense going through a lot of archival footage from the era and seeing a lot of a lot of gruesome images that were never broadcasted or only broadcasted once. And so to decompress from that, I definitely had to take many walks around my apartment or just around wherever, just to get some sunlight and like listen to happy music and stuff like that. But it was ultimately in service of the story we were trying to tell. So I think it's just par for the course.
That's true. I love horror because I think with good drama, there's drama, there's comedy, but I think with horror, I think there's more room for storytelling, and that's why it can be more imaginative, but it can also kind of hit those hard facts, and I feel like you did that. And I'd like to say the stunt work, that was fun. The way you and seeing some of the behind scenes footage, the way you all set that up to do those scenes. I mean, what was that process like then?
I mean, I love practical effects and practical stunt work, even when we are working with, such a low budget, because I think that just, makes making the movie fun. Makes it feel, especially when you've been on set for hours on end, and like when we were filming all the big stunt stuff, it was an overnight shoot, so we were like our 9 or 10 into our evening, and it was late. And I knew that if once we had got to this part of the shoot, energy would be kind of restored, because it is such a fun thing to do, and it makes it feel like everyone's involved because they're all helping set up these practical effects. So from the beginning, like I knew I wanted to do that. And like I pushed the team, our production designers, our VFX guy, to really help me brainstorm ideas in terms of how we can do it practically and safely. Because yeah, it's just so much fun, and finding creative ways to do it in camera. Like, I mean, it was definitely challenging, and I think we had to sacrifice a couple of our more, ambitious ideas to do it. But I think it ultimately worked so much better for the budget, for the story. And like when you see it on screen, especially like in a theater, like you really feel it. And yeah, and in terms of like inspirations, like I grew up watching, Jackie Chan movies. And so seeing him
Yes.
in like Police Story, like hopping across buses, or, gliding, or I guess like sliding down the railing, was just like I don't know, that like those are the movies that I love and grew up with. So emulating that on any scale has just been a dream of mine. So I mean, I was really happy to do it here.
Another thing that there's been, which I'm very happy about, at, well, I'd say in cinema or even at the box office, is now we're seeing more Asian stories or Asian-led projects. They're more financial or more commercial success, or even creatively a success. I mean, I'll at least mention Everything Everywhere All at Once, because I took my dad to see that, and
Oh my gosh.
he cried. So because he's crying, I can't cry. I gotta keep strong, because and it was just, but it was a moment to see him connect with it, myself connecting with it. And I'm happy that we're just seeing more of these stories come out. And so again, when Overlook had sent this to me, I was like, well, absolutely, I want to see this. I mean, I've been very happy to see. I think even there was another project that came out with from the Vang brothers, and they talked about their history as well. And so I really like to see. I'm happy that we're seeing more of those. I'm also really happy some of them are genre films versus maybe a comedy or drama. Like, you guys are really coming out with some solid work. And speaking of just growing up, what are some of your inspirations when it comes to film?
Yeah, like I'm just happy that you brought up, Asian American stories in the genre space, because I think that's like something that, has been pretty sorely underrepresented. And like,
Yes.
as much as, there's been such a push in Asian American cinema recently, I haven't connected with all the movies, just because like they're not like about backgrounds that I'm super like familiar with, or they're representing a very like one-sided lifestyle that it's just like has not been my story. And seeing I think Everything Everywhere is such a perfect model for that, because it's it's telling a very globalized story in what's like a fun genre piece, and I just can't get enough of it. I think I've seen it multiple times in movie theaters, so it's been but yeah, I mean, in terms of like inspirations, growing up, I actually did not love horror or genre stuff that much.
Wow.
Just because I think like my dad would watch a lot of Asian horror movies, and it'd always be running, and that was something that just kind of scared me away. And so I didn't. So the short of it was, I didn't love it until recently, where I saw that genre was such a powerful tool to kind of talk about other issues that are more complicated, to really break down in maybe like a traditional drama or comedy or something. And so at first I was kind of drawn to it for that pragmatic reason, but coming to see it, like even coming to make something in the genre space, like it's just I have so much more fun with it, because of all the things you can really do creatively. Like, with this movie, we joke around that like, the biggest challenge of the movie was just, it was not shooting during COVID. It was not like casting Cambodian actors or whatever. It was making a rug seem scary, or like at least like a very like, you know, an energy that we haven't seen before. So it's just like that challenge, I think, is really like enticing to me. And so I strayed far from the question, but inspiration wise, like I'd say now I'm really inspired by Asian horror movies, especially coming out of Japan and Korea, especially like, you know, from the early 2000s, like Dark Waters. The Japanese version is, you
Much
know,
better.
much better. And I think
Yes.
two, like it's like once you see what, you know, they're doing with that movie in terms of like the social message and commentary, it's like, oh, like it makes me feel more emotional than maybe seeing that in like another movie or like another genre. I think The Wailing, the Korean movie from 2016, is terrifying, and I love it. And then a lot of Bong Joon-ho's work I'm also really inspired by.
Who isn't? But yes, I love that.
And like, especially like The Host, I think is a perfect example of that, because it's, you know, it's breaking down like something as complex as like US colonialism in Korea through a monster flick, which is something that's so familiar to audiences. But, you know, with that twist, it becomes something new, and it becomes something so exciting. And there's so much more you can, I think, say and discuss about it using, you know, the confines of genre, which is like so fun to me. So yeah, so those are some of the movies that I like. Yeah.
I'm so happy that you mentioned The Host. It's funny because a few of my friends that I'll mention that to, I've not seen that. I go, how? But again, I remember seeing that back when it came out, and it's still one to gravitate towards. And I'm just happy to see this success that he's also had. I mean, I'll admit I was that kid, no words mean nothing. But when he got up on the stage and accepted his Oscar, I was screaming and shouting because that was the best thing ever. That I was just like, oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it's you know, it's so powerful. Like even, you know, having just that stage to say whatever you want for whatever 1 minute 30 seconds. It's great.
No, one of the other things that I wanted to ask about on this project too, because you were also like, some of the big scenes were at night, but also how was it? I want to know, without spoiling, but doing the lighting in that big scene to kind of give it that effect or that emotional impact, because that was
the big scene at the end, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It was, well, okay. So that was something that we also shot practically, but had to involve a little more VFX just because of like, you know, spacing issues is
sure,
you know. So we shot, you know, three plates of that and composited them together. Our production design team like rigged up PVC pipes as a frame to hold you know, something in the air.
Oh wow, okay.
And you know, so and the PVC pipes, I'm such a big fan of PVC pipes because they're cheap, they're sturdy, and you can get them from anywhere and in any size. And so I think that was more of a budget concern, but we had, you know, we got some studio time for our more key scenes. And then our cinematographer, Graham Byers, who I've worked with extensively and is wonderful, he kind of devised a bunch of different lights to kind of shine in different places for that shot.
Oh, okay.
So, you know,
that's neat.
I wish I could show some behind the scenes photos, but it took me too long to pull them up. But like, it's it was a complicated lighting setup that I think, you know, looks very simple on the final product, but like in camera, it was very hot. It was very like, you know, tight. But that was all, you know, that was all him. And even when we were setting it up, you know, there were a couple lights that we were like, oh, like what if we do it here? Or like, what if we like angle them this way, or you know, put filters in front of them this way. And that kind of gave it more life, which is always fun because I think, you know, the filmmaking process is so long and can be so lonely. And I think just being able to bounce ideas back at any time, at any point of the production, whether it be pre, during, or post, like has really been something that I love doing, and I think something that helped push this project because it's, because it's so like I think unique in a sense. I would tell everyone on this project that we only have one chance to tell a story like this in this way. So I think that just kind of gave everyone a little bit of a push to just kind of like give me their craziest idea, and then we'd work together to distill the best version of that. And I think something with the lighting for that last shot in particular is kind of a key example of how we pulled that off.
I like that you said that too, in terms of I would say motivation, but no, that's makes me love this film even more. I would like to know then too, when it came to film, well, one, where did you get this rug?
It's also okay. I feel so bad because like I feel like we're gonna spoil everything if we talk about it in depth. So I'm gonna try to be
okay.
possible, right? No, but like it's the rug is supposed to kind of look cheap and kind of inauthentic and artificial. And so we got it for I think like $70 on rugs.com.
Wow.
So
okay.
So it was.
No, it's effective. I know if I ever saw something like that or came across it, I'd veer away now. I mean, it was very effective in the film. It was creepy, and then just more that you added to it with the story element as well.
Yeah, and I think finding a shag rug of that, like I guess like for lack of a better word, like fluffiness, definitely like pretty challenging. I think we had gone through a couple rug options, but then eventually like the one on rugs.com was just the most I don't know, tactile.
Okay.
And so it also helped us with the production design, and because Emily Kim and Jordan Shervitz, like our production designers, had to put a lot of like clay, which kind of served as our dust, into the fabric of the carpet, and that's how we achieved that effect.
Okay, well,
so the clay is like very safe because we were so close in proximity to it. So that was our first concern, but then also just like it's a very thick powder, which was like super fun to kind of see on camera. And so so the rug I think was a really perfect prop in terms of how it looked and how it felt and all the stuff that it could hold in terms of just like our special practical effects.
How long did it take you to shoot the project?
So shooting it was we shot it in 2.5 days. So we shot all of our day scenes, all of our night scenes, and then we spent a half day in a studio. So it was quick. It was definitely a sprint, especially because we were starting. I mean, our classes started the week after we finished shooting, so we kind of had to squeeze everything in. Really trucking. Yeah, so it was it was a sprint, and everyone who did it, was still in school, and they were absolute troops for rallying and kind of giving up their last bit of summer to do this project. The editing was a completely different story. That took 8 months to push out. So it was definitely a sprint and then a marathon.
So what is it like now though to see it starting to be at festivals? How's that feeling?
Oh, it's definitely surreal. For the longest time, I think with every movie or every film, like there's a point where you just don't know what you're working on, or you feel like you don't know if it's going to play anywhere or find a home anywhere. Right.
No, I hear that a lot, and I'm like, I honestly, before this, I didn't know how much went in to the movie making process and how much went into also, I guess, really the selling of your product or just getting a distributor, like any of that. So it's major that it's playing at festivals.
Yeah. And like we have a lot more exciting announcements that are still kind of being like solidified, which is cool. But I think just like even seeing it at Overlook in New Orleans was really, really special because it's the first time that I've seen a film of mine play on a big screen for like an audience that I don't know, which is really exciting. And just seeing them like visibly react or like kind of jump out of their seats during different moments was really special. Something that I always like to add is like we designed this movie to kind of be a very theatrical experience because of, in terms of sound, like we use the full breadth of 5.1 Dolby to really like get audiences to feel the rumble of certain scenes and to really immerse them in our like historical footage, for example. And then also like in terms of like there's one like, and I'm so glad this worked at Overlook, or like I'm so glad this like came together at Overlook, and I'm looking forward to seeing it in other theaters. But like there's one like key camera flashing effect that kind of plays after like a jump scare. And that I remember Graham, our DP, and I were talking about how we wanted to play in theaters, and like, there's something so great about seeing movies on the big screen because it's so involving for an audience. And the camera flash go off on the movie and kind of seeing that really overexposed image bounce back onto the audience. It was almost like we were capturing them in that photograph as well, which is like, it's something that's like, it's so abstract when you're like planning it in a room with, with nothing. And then when you go see it in a movie theater, it's so gratifying to, I guess, see that come through, because it's not like, and again, like it doesn't have to happen that way. And like, it probably would still be just as good watching it on a laptop screen, but seeing it in a row of seats is just, it's really special. So seeing it in, so I don't know. I'm just excited to go and watch it in more theaters and see how people react to it.
I think that's great. Also, I found that interesting at Overlook, though, sitting in a room knowing that possibly the filmmaker's in there, that made me on edge, because I always, when it comes to horror, I'm always going to enjoy it. It's just a matter of how much. And I also don't want to be that person who like screams loudly or jumps really. I don't want to be that guy, but I kind of am sometimes. So I think that's really kind of unique that you get to experience that. And I think Overlook was just a great festival in terms of just the genre. So the fact that I got to play there, but I can't wait to see where else this goes. I mean, that's it. It's truly, just one as an Asian American, but just being able to see this and see the story you're telling, and the fact that you got me to go look up history that I didn't know about. It's very thought-provoking, but also like it hit me in the heart. And again, I still, remember growing up and just not seeing myself represented. So just knowing other people are seeing this, both in front of him, behind the camera, I just think that's really amazing.
Yeah, and like I think like Asian American genre representation is so important, because it's important too to I think keep in mind like how we can do this ethically and responsibly, because like the last thing I want this movie to be, or like any future movies, I guess, would be just exploitative, and I think we have to toe a line between making it meaningful and making it not meaningful, and I think that's something that it's always really present in my work, and so I hope really comes across, and hopefully it's come across with you, but also like other people, so
it did. I again, not spoiling scenes, but there are just certain things that you did that I really, again, I appreciate, because it was more emotional. It was still just as intense, because again, those last few moments, my anxiety levels were just through the roof. And still even afterwards, because it was just like, whoa, what? Yeah, I had to process what I watched. Again, it's, it was fantastic. So I'm curious then too, what do you have? What's next then? Are you working on another short or thinking about feature length?
Yeah, well, so we also joke that the feature length version of this is just it takes place in an interior design store, and it's about like killer carpets and killer couches and stuff like that, which is not going to happen. It's a joke.
I know, but it's a good one though. I mean, I'm not. I would go see it. Just saying.
You know, if something does come to mind, like I'd love to pursue it, but this feels like a very like one-off piece. But I'm always open to options. In terms of like next stuff, like I'm writing a lot of stuff in the genre space. I think like that's where I just have so much fun. And there are a couple projects that I won't talk about now, just because like I'm still kind of hashing out the details.
Sure.
But I really love reinventing classic mythology and classic horror mythology with an Asian American spin. Which I think amazing. Which is so cool, because I think there's so much, and in terms of like the adaptation, there's so much to pull from in terms of cinematic history or literary history that like really excites me and can really make something a lot deeper than what initially it might be. So I'm writing something in that space. I'm writing like I also love like the procedural genre. Off a side note, like
no, that's okay. I'm a huge Law and Order fan, so I love the procedural.
So like I've been toying with something in that area as well, but like but definitely stuff that I will push out into the world when it's ready.
No, I think that's great. I mean, it's insane that you just finished school, but you still put out this project, and I just that's insane.
Yeah, it's been a rush. It's been like busy for sure, but like I think the best kind of busy and a good problem to have. So I've been very thankful that that this is not only found a home, but multiple homes, and all across the world soon. But yeah, it's been fun, and when it ends, I look forward to just keep grinding and keep telling stories, and just keep on keeping on. I don't know.
No, I think that's great. And I can't wait for more people to see this. And I'll just tell people to keep an eye out for Swept Under, because it was, oh my God. It's just, again, another solid project that came out this year to me for horror. And I really feel this year's been great with horror films in general. So to end this, I'm curious now, if you've had some downtime, what is the last good horror film that you watched or that you enjoyed? Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to pull up my letterbox. Well, I've been catching a lot of movies at the AMC, making the most out of my Stubbs membership. I just saw Marcel the Shell yesterday. It was so funny.
I need to see that. It's not. I don't think it's playing here.
I don't know when it comes out, like nationwide, but like definitely it's I don't know. It's great. And such like a good change of pace from like other stuff that I've been watching. But okay, in terms of horror, there's a Korean horror thing from 2001. It's called Sorum, Sourum. It's a really slow burn horror that's like takes a deep dive into like the psychology and psychological effects of like trauma within like a bunch of residents in a Korean like apartment condo. And I just really enjoy, like, I think from a visual standpoint, it does a really good job of just telling it visually, but then also it's more mystery than I think horror. There aren't like a lot of jump scares or scary stuff, but like definitely keeps you on your edge about, what the conclusion is going to be. And the ending is like it leans, and the ending turns into more horror stuff, but like that was a really, really solid watch recently. I've been catching up a lot on genre classics too. Like I just watched Death Proof, Tarantino's movie. And
you just for the first time?
The first time, I know. And like
I gotta remember, I'm older. I saw that in theaters, so okay.
Oh man, yeah, that must have been crazy in theaters. I was watching it just by myself, but it was I mean, that was so much fun.
My heart was pounding during that entire sequence.
Yeah. And like, you can tell he has so much fun making his movies as well as, writing them. And for it was just really refreshing to watch that, because it just kind of shows you what you can do with, genre and the form and writing and structure. And it's just so out there, and like I think you'd be hard pressed to find something as playful and as fun as that was today.
And the stunt in that, like,
oh yeah, oh my gosh.
I mean, I remember I was literally trying to rip the arm handles off in the theater while watching that, because I was just like, when's it going to happen? What's going to happen? This is so intense. Because I will say, when I watch a horror film, I just completely surrender to what I'm watching. Everything else around me does not exist. I'm fully invested. And so that's why maybe for me, sometimes I enjoy the experience more than maybe some do, because I love the genre. Actually cinema in general, but this genre specifically. But yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. I'll definitely have to revisit it. But yeah, I think those are some of the highlights that I've seen recently. But how about you?
Oh yeah, I've seen way too many. I will say, Chloe Okuno's Watcher is a slow burn that has a really great payoff. And from a directing standpoint, she's just so awesome. Like, some of the shots she pulls off is just, and whoever their location scout was, that was stunning. Like, it was just visually stunning. And then I was lucky enough to get to see the Black Phone at Overlook.
Oh, same here. Yeah.
It just, wow. I haven't been to a theater experience though in a very long time. Yeah. That was a packed house in a sense, and people either yelling at the screen, cheering, laughing, gasping like that. It was just, that's why I love cinema. And, I will say, since the pandemic, that, here, in Missouri, places were still open, but they were dead though, in a sense. Like, I remember, what was it? I think Army of the Dead played at one of our theaters here, and there was only maybe one other person in that theater besides myself. And then when I went and saw the Demon Slayer film, I was the only person in the cinema. I was like, well, that's cool. But I was like, oh, that deserved a big audience, but
right. No, and I think like I love seeing anime play on the big screen. Like, it's so much fun.
It warms my heart. Can I tell you, one of my favorite things seeing on screen was Spirited Away when it came out. Yeah. Man.
Well, Fandango is doing like a AMC run of Ghibli movies.
Yes, I need to see some of those. I own them all, but I think Spirited Away was the very first one I got to actually see when it came out. And I just remember, because I'm still, as much as I'm like, oh, awards mean nothing, same thing. I was so excited. I'm like, please win the Oscar, please win the Oscar. And it did. And I was so happy to see how well it was just received around the world. And then same thing, Demon Slayer, in a time of the pandemic, was, I think, 2020s or 2021 or 2020's biggest global box office haul. So I was like, that's amazing, because that anime was something else too.
It's intense for sure. I binge watched the Netflix seasons just so I could catch the movie in theaters, and it was crazy.
Same.
So it was worth it. My eyes definitely paid the price, but it was definitely worth it.
Same. I did that, and I just finished watching everything else that they have released so far on, I think Hulu has them all after the film.
Oh, really? Okay. No.
Yeah, so I want to say there's about maybe 12 or 13 more episodes. It's the entertainment district, so that was solid too. That's something else I would love to see more. More anime on the big screen, but I'll settle for just more horror that is just, again, it's a great year for horror. So
And really thankful that, you know, we were able to have this conversation. It's been amazing talking with you, man.
well, I appreciate it. I'll put everything down below too. And again, I want to say thank you, and I wish you the best of success because I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you. And yeah, I'll keep you up to date. So,
All right, thanks. And to everyone else, till next time.
cue the outro music.
Yeah.
You have been listening to the Horror Hour. See you next time.